Parolee infects probation officer, then murders her.
Tamika Jefferson, a 50-year-old parole officer with 2 decades of service at the Shelby County Parole Office, lived what appeared to be a stable life. Known for her stern professionalism, Tamika oversaw parolees with precision, her desk cluttered with case files reflecting her dedication. Among those under her supervision was Jalen Dupree, a 30-year-old parolee released in January 2018 after serving 5 years for armed robbery. Charismatic but volatile, Jalen initially seemed like just another name on her roster. However, by March, their professional relationship had taken a dark turn. The affair began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Weekly check-ins between parole officers and clients are routine, designed to ensure compliance. But for Tamika and Jalen, these meetings evolved into something more. By late spring, they were meeting secretly at a rundown motel off Beale Street, a location chosen for its anonymity. What drove them together became clearer as investigators later uncovered details. For Tamika, married to Harold Jefferson for 28 years, there was a growing sense of being unappreciated.
So she was wrong in multiple ways because she's the one in power. Whenever this happens, she's seen as the smart one. He's like government property. She was put in the power of position, so it's almost like she graped him. You know what I mean? And then she was married too, and it's
Harold, a mechanic, was hardworking but emotionally distant. Their adult children, Keisha, 27, and Darnell, 25, had moved out, Keisha to Nashville and Darnell to Atlanta, leaving Tamika feeling increasingly isolated. Jalen, on the other hand, saw an opportunity for leverage. His charm masked a calculating nature, and he viewed Tamika not only as a companion but also as a shield against potential parole violations. Their clandestine relationship remained hidden for months, facilitated by Tamika's position of authority. As a parole officer, she falsified reports to cover Jalen's missed check-ins and minor infractions. This manipulation could have continued indefinitely if not for a medical crisis that shattered Tamika's fragile equilibrium. In early July 2018, Tamika visited a clinic complaining of fatigue and a rash. Blood tests revealed devastating news: she was HIV positive. Further analysis traced the infection to recent exposure, narrowing the time frame to her involvement with Jalen. Confronting him privately, Tamika demanded answers. Jalen admitted he had known his HIV status since 2016,
he didn't give a fuck,
but deliberately concealed it. The revelation ignited a firestorm of emotions within Tamika: betrayal, anger, and fear. Determined to exact revenge, she vowed to revoke his parole, fabricating violations such as drug use and missed appointments to justify sending him back to prison. For Jalen, the threat of returning to incarceration was intolerable. Having served 5 years for armed robbery, he understood the harsh realities of prison life. The prospect of losing his freedom filled him with fury. Investigators would later describe this moment as the tipping point, the collision of 2 deeply flawed individuals whose actions set off a chain reaction culminating in tragedy. By mid-August, the situation had reached a breaking point. On August 14, 2018, Tamika reported to work as usual, unaware that her carefully constructed world was about to collapse. That evening, her body was discovered in her office at the parole building, her throat slashed with a jagged knife.
He came to the office and did it? I don't know why she would threaten. I guess that was an emotional outburst, but why would you tell him what you're going to do? Like, I guess you see that in the movies, women do that. I'm going to do this, I'm going to tell him in the morning, I'm going to go to the cops. Like, just go do it. Why are you going to tell him? That's just going to give him time to think about what he should do.
Blood soaked her desk and scattered papers, creating a gruesome tableau that shocked even seasoned investigators.
Yeah.
The discovery marked the beginning of an investigation that would peel back the layers of deception surrounding Tamika's double life. At approximately 9 p.m., Otis Kendrick, a janitor employed by the building's maintenance staff, made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the community. As he entered Tamika Jefferson's office to clean, he found her lifeless body slumped over her desk. A half-finished report on Jalen Dupree remained open on her computer screen, a grim
He didn't even think about it.
Detail investigators would later scrutinize for clues. Otis immediately called 911, his voice trembling as he described the scene. Within minutes, officers from the Memphis Police Department arrived, securing the area and beginning the painstaking process of documenting evidence. Leading the investigation was Detective LaShonda Freeman, a 38-year-old veteran known for her meticulous approach and sharp eye for detail. Freeman's presence brought a sense of calm authority to the chaotic scene. Papers were strewn across the floor, a coffee mug lay shattered near the desk, and there were no immediate signs of the murder weapon. It was clear that a violent struggle had taken place, though the exact sequence of events remained unclear. Detective Freeman quickly established a timeline based on initial observations. Security logs showed that Tamika had signed into the building at 5:15 p.m., indicating she planned to work late. Her car was still parked in the lot outside, suggesting she hadn't left after arriving. The medical examiner, who arrived shortly after the police, estimated the time of death between 6:30 and 8 p.m. This narrow window became a focal point for the investigation, guiding efforts to identify potential suspects and witnesses. Tamika's husband, Harold Jefferson, was among the first individuals contacted. When officers reached him at his mechanic's shop, he appeared visibly shaken but cooperative.
Yeah, he didn't know what was going on probably, or why. Like, what? Like, he got to find out she got AIDS, that she died, and she died because she had an affair. All that at once. He's mad, angry, sad, every emotion probably.
Upon arriving at the parole office, Harold broke down emotionally, describing their marriage as strained but denying any involvement in her death. He admitted they had argued earlier that morning about her long hours at work, a recurring issue in their relationship. However, Harold insisted he had been at his garage all day, working on repairs until closing time around 7 p.m. Tamika's co-workers revealed additional layers of complexity. Marva Tate, her supervisor, noted Tamika's recent change in behavior. She had become increasingly distracted and prone to unexplained absences. These observations aligned with the mounting stress Tamika faced due to her secret affair with Jalen Dupree and the fallout from her HIV diagnosis. Another coworker mentioned overhearing Tamika speaking angrily on the phone several days prior, though the substance of the conversation was unclear. She sounded upset, the coworker recalled. Like she was threatening someone. Suspicion naturally fell on Jalen Dupree, whose name appeared prominently in Tamika's open case file. Scheduled for a routine check-in at 6 p.m., Jalen had failed to appear, leaving no record of his whereabouts during the critical time frame surrounding Tamika's death. Freeman's team pulled his...
Yeah, even if she did, he don't know that, so he should have checked in or called or whatever it was.
Parole file, uncovering a troubling history of violence and a pending review flagged by Tamika herself. In recent weeks, she had documented alleged violations, including missed meetings and suspected drug use, that could have led to his reincarceration. While these claims were later determined to be fabricated, they underscored the tension between them and provided Jalen with a potential motive for retaliation. However, Jalen...
Shit, that's probably even worse if it was fabricated. It's like, damn, she lying on you to return the Daryl? You definitely must have been angry. Like, if it was true, you might have been like, damn, I did it, my bad, I relapsed. But it was fabricated?
Wasn't the only person under scrutiny. Harold's shaky alibi and hints from coworkers about Tamika's personal troubles widened the pool of suspects. Investigators began exploring alternative theories, including the possibility of jealousy or domestic conflict within her marriage. Yet, despite these leads, Jalen remained the primary focus of the investigation. His volatile past, combined with his absence from the check-in log and Tamika's pending review of his case, painted a damning picture. By the end of the night, the crime scene had been thoroughly documented and key pieces of evidence collected. Blood spatter patterns suggested Tamika had been seated at her desk when attacked, likely caught off guard. A broken pen and overturned chair hinted at a brief struggle, though the lack of defensive wounds indicated she may not have fought back effectively. The absence of the murder weapon posed a significant challenge, forcing investigators to expand their search beyond the immediate vicinity of the parole office. The first order of business was revisiting Harold Jefferson's alibi.
How did he get in? She had to sign in to work, so did he just sneak in? There ain't no cameras around that they could have caught him on? What?
While his emotional breakdown at the crime scene suggested genuine grief, detectives needed concrete proof to either confirm or rule out his involvement. Harold admitted to marital strain but insisted he had been at work all day on August 14th. Pay stubs from his mechanic shop corroborated his claim, showing he clocked in at 8 a.m. and left at 7 p.m. His boss, Clarence Webb, further supported this timeline, stating that Harold had been busy repairing vehicles throughout the afternoon. Despite these confirmations, Freeman remained cautious. Harold's shaky demeanor during questioning hinted at unresolved tensions in his marriage, prompting investigators to explore whether jealousy or resentment could have played a role in Tamika's murder. However, attention soon shifted decisively toward Jalen Dupree. A closer examination of Tamika's notes in Jalen's parole file revealed inconsistencies that raised red flags. For months, her reports had described him as compliant, if not exemplary, a stark contrast to the sudden allegations of missed check-ins and drug use documented in the weeks leading up to her death. Officer Tyrone Baxter flagged these discrepancies, noting how they seemed calculated rather than organic. This manipulation of records pointed to ulterior motives, perhaps retaliation for something personal between them. A search warrant executed on Jalen's apartment in South Memphis yielded critical evidence. Among his belongings, officers discovered a blood-stained shirt hidden under a pile of clothes in his bedroom closet.
He kept the shirt. That's why he got caught in the first place. I keep forgetting. Criminals are criminals because they're stupid.
Forensic analysis later confirmed the blood matched Tamika's DNA. Also found was a crumpled motel receipt dated August 13th, linking Jalen to one of the rundown motels off Beale Street where Tamika and he had conducted their secret meetings. These discoveries painted a damning picture, tying Jalen directly to both Tamika's professional and private lives. Jalen was tracked down at a friend's house 2 days after the murder and brought in for questioning. Sweating profusely and visibly agitated, he denied any involvement in Tamika's death. "She wanted me locked up again," he snapped when pressed about their relationship. He admitted to the affair but claimed Tamika framed him out of spite after learning of his HIV-positive status, a revelation that shocked even seasoned investigators. According to Jalen, Tamika's fury over contracting HIV drove her to falsify violations in his parole file, setting him up for reincarceration. In his telling, she was the aggressor, and he merely a victim of her vindictiveness. Freeman wasn't convinced. She pushed Jalen on his whereabouts during the critical time frame between 6:30 and 8 p.m. on August 14th. Initially evasive, Jalen eventually claimed he'd spent the evening with his cousin, Malik Grayson, watching television at Malik's apartment. When questioned separately, however, Malik's account quickly unraveled. He vaguely recalled seeing Jalen earlier in the day but couldn't confirm his presence during the exact hours in question. Under scrutiny, Malik admitted he might have been mistaken, leaving Jalen without a solid alibi.
He said, "Don't put me in your murder."
Meanwhile, additional pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Clinic records confirmed Tamika's HIV diagnosis, providing context for her erratic behavior in the weeks before her death. A colleague, Nia Caldwell, also came forward with crucial information. She revealed overhearing Tamika arguing heatedly on the phone several days prior, though she couldn't identify the caller. "I heard her say something like, 'You're going to pay for what you've done,'" Nia recounted. It sounded serious. As Freeman and her team pieced together the timeline, patterns began to emerge. Phone records showed multiple calls between Tamika and Jalen in the days leading up to her death. Their final conversation, lasting less than 2 minutes at 5:45 p.m., likely set the stage for their fatal confrontation. Evidence suggested Jalen arrived at the parole office shortly afterward, gaining access through a side entrance often used by staff.
Evidence, probably his cell phone. He took his cell phone there. Now they got his cell phone pinging off a tower, and it's probably video evidence. It's a parole office. They got to be worried about revenge all the time. They send people back to jail. People don't want to be on parole. This has to be a worry for every parole officer.
Blood spatter analysis indicated Tamika was seated at her desk when attacked, likely caught off guard. The absence of defensive wounds hinted she may have trusted her assailant or underestimated their intent. Officer Tyrone Baxter, the forensic specialist on Freeman's team, played a pivotal role in analyzing critical items recovered during the probe. The bloody shirt found in Jalen Dupree's apartment provided undeniable proof of his involvement. DNA testing confirmed that the bloodstains matched Tamika's profile, directly tying Jalen to the murder scene. Further examination revealed a partial fingerprint on the motel receipt dated August 13th, an item also discovered in Jalen's possession. This fingerprint belonged to Jalen, linking him conclusively to the rundown motel where he and Tamika had conducted their claim.
And I don't know how she thought, like, oh, I'm going to send this dude back to jail and falsify this. He probably would have said that, Your Honor, I didn't do none of those. And we had an affair, because she would have been wrong for it, not really him. We had an affair, she did this, blah, blah, blah. Now she's sending me, and they could have looked at it and be like, yo, yeah, he went from exemplary to now he's just a douchebag. So I don't know how she figured that would work out. I don't know. I guess she was just acting emotionally and erratically at that news, like, I'm going to tell my husband my life over. But come on.
Clandestine meetings. Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence emerged when a knife was recovered from a dumpster 2 blocks away from the parole office. Forensic analysis showed traces of Tamika's blood on the blade, along with microscopic fragments of Jalen's skin cells, evidence suggesting he had wielded the weapon during the attack. The jagged edge of the knife matched the wounds inflicted on Tamika's throat, leaving little doubt about its role in the murder. Combined with the other physical evidence, this discovery painted a chilling picture of premeditation and violence. Security footage from cameras positioned near the parole office added another layer of confirmation. While no cameras were installed inside the building itself, external recordings captured a hooded figure entering through a side entrance at 6:20 p.m. and exiting approximately 50 minutes later at 7:10 p.m., a time frame consistent with the medical examiner's estimated window of death. Though the individual's face was obscured by a hoodie, their build and gait closely resembled Jalen's. Investigators noted that the person walked briskly upon exiting, clutching what appeared to be a dark object wrapped in cloth, a detail that aligned with witness accounts of Jalen carrying something bulky under his arm earlier that evening. Armed with this mounting body of evidence, Detective Freeman confronted Jalen once again in an intense interrogation session. She laid out the facts systematically: the bloody shirt, the motel receipt, the knife bearing both Tamika's blood and his DNA, and the security footage placing him at the scene. Under pressure, Jalen grew increasingly erratic, his composure crumbling. He dismissed the shirt as planted evidence, claiming someone must have broken into his apartment to frame him. "I didn't kill her," he insisted, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. When pressed about the knife, he doubled down, asserting it wasn't his and accusing investigators of...
Why they even talking to him? I guess it's better to have just a admission of guilt, but they don't need nothing.
Fabricating connections. Yet, when shown the security footage, Jalen faltered, unable to provide a plausible explanation for the hooded figure's presence or actions. While Jalen remained the primary suspect, Harold Jefferson's involvement couldn't be entirely ruled out. Renewed scrutiny fell on him after one of his co-workers, Raynard Poole, recalled seeing Harold leave the garage briefly at 6 p.m. Though Harold maintained he had only stepped out to grab dinner, investigators explored whether his truck might have been used in connection with the crime. Tire track analysis near the parole office ultimately eliminated this possibility. The tread patterns did not match Harold's vehicle. Despite these findings, Harold's shaky demeanor continued to raise questions about potential emotional motives tied to his strained marriage.
I know he was mad at that co-worker, like, motherfucker, I went out. You tell him that.
Nia Caldwell, Tamika's co-worker, provided yet another crucial piece of testimony. During a follow-up interview, she revealed overhearing Tamika arguing heatedly with Jalen on August 13th, the day before her murder. She kept saying things like, "You've ruined my life," Nia recounted.
She ain't say nothing to her? Like, hey, you arguing with a parolee like that? What did he do to ruin your life? Like, come on, you just sat by.
It sounded personal, like it wasn't just about work.
Unless she know, and she probably doing it too, and she just don't want to come out and say, like, I know they were having sex, I know they were fucking, but she don't want to say that, put herself at risk.
This revelation added depth to the narrative, highlighting the toxic dynamic between Tamika and Jalen and underscoring the emotional stakes driving their final confrontation. Jalen's rage over Tamika's retaliation appeared to be the most plausible explanation. By falsifying violations in his parole file, Tamika had effectively threatened his freedom, setting off a chain reaction of fear and desperation. For someone with Jalen's history of volatility and resentment, losing his liberty again may have felt like an unbearable outcome. Investigators theorized that this perceived betrayal, combined with his knowledge of Tamika's HIV diagnosis, ignited a combustible mix of anger and vengeance, culminating in the fatal attack. The key to understanding the motive lay in Tamika's medical records and phone logs. Her clinic visit on July 30, 2018, confirmed her HIV diagnosis, a revelation that shattered her sense of stability and trust. Investigators obtained access to her call history through a subpoena, uncovering a furious conversation she had with Jalen Dupree shortly after receiving her test results. The call, logged at 4:12 p.m., lasted nearly 10 minutes and contained several heated exchanges. Witnesses described Tamika as livid during this period, and phone transcripts revealed her explicit threat to end him by revoking his parole. For Tamika, this ultimatum represented not only professional retaliation but also personal retribution for what she perceived as Jalen's deliberate deception regarding his HIV-positive status. Jalen's prison medical file, secured via a court-ordered warrant, corroborated Tamika's suspicions. It showed he had tested positive for HIV in 2016, information he never disclosed to her during their affair. This omission became a pivotal factor in unraveling the dynamics of their relationship. To Tamika, Jalen's silence equated to betrayal. To Jalen, her threat to send him back to prison represented an existential crisis. Both parties viewed themselves as victims, yet neither seemed capable of recognizing the harm they had inflicted upon each other. On the day of the murder, Jalen's actions deviated sharply from his usual routine. Scheduled for a mandatory check-in at 6 p.m., he failed to appear, instead heading directly to the parole office where Tamika worked. Security footage and witness statements placed him entering the building around 6:20 p.m. and leaving approximately 50 minutes later, a timeline consistent with the coroner's estimate of Tamika's death between 6:30 and 8 p.m. Investigators traced the knife used in the killing, corroborating statements from his boss, Clarence Webb. A thorough search of Harold's truck found no traces of blood or other incriminating evidence.
So the husband he good on all edges. I'm sure they stopped looking at him at this point.
That time frame, suggesting escalating tension and unresolved conflict. The trail that defined their relationship had finally unraveled, leaving devastation in its wake. As she described Tamika's fury, providing context for the emotional.
So they're just going over basically the same stuff at this point. They both were messed up people mentally. She was cheating on her husband. He knew his HIV status, probably slept with her and other women. She became vindictive. He wasn't going back to prison. Boom, you got the perfect thing. The dominoes collided. She kind of, you want to feel sorry for her, but she kind of stacked it on herself. Not only was she morally bankrupt cheating on her husband, but then she also became professionally bankrupt when she started sleeping with him, and then something happened. You play stupid games, get stupid prizes. And then she tried to do that to him too. Like that should have just been like, I don't know. It's easier said than done. But it just kept going and kept building up. And some people might say that he's a victim of her. Like if he would have told her that, though, she probably wouldn't have did it. But she was still thinking about it. Had she done it before? Everybody else in the office doing it. Then she wanted to send him back. She could have. I guess to her maybe it was like, I was covering for you. Like you should have been back in jail. I was covering for your violations and missteps. Like I could have sent you back. So now her writing stuff is like, hey, it happened before. Like, I'm not fabricating. I just covered for him the last time. So now I'm just bringing it to light. But the way she wrote it looked like it was too soon and emotional. And somebody would have looked at it like, this don't make no sense. He did that, and just. So, hey, they both stupid. And he's stupid for doing that. He could have told on her. Like, he could have easily just be like, yo, no, I did tell her about my status. We still did it. And now she's being vindictive. Like, he was the stupidest out of everybody. Like, He could have got out of that probably in the jail and like went to, I guess he didn't want to risk it, going to court like, yo, look at our text message, I got this and that. He could have took pictures of her or whatever, or sent the text like, oh, I'm sorry or whatever, and then recorded their phone conversations, have plenty of evidence to say, nah, she being vindictive. Then she would have got in trouble for sleeping with a parolee and falsifying stuff, and then he would have been out scot-free really. She can't prove like, oh, he should have went to jail, but I was covering it for. That's not my fault. I ain't asked you to do that. So he was stupid. Now he in jail for the rest of his life probably. Let me see. Does it say anything about where he at?
His threats to revoke Jalen's parole represented provocation, suggesting that fear for his freedom drove Jalen to confront her. However, the premeditated purchase of the knife and Jalen's inability to provide a coherent alibi undermined these arguments. Pawn shop records dated August 12th left little room for ambiguity, establishing clear intent and negating any plausible claim of self-defense.
Yeah, he could have, if he already had a knife on him, he could have went there and be like, she did this and said, you going back to jail, you know you can do it. And he got emotionally, boom. But he already planned for it.
After 6 days of testimony and deliberation, the jury retired to weigh the evidence. The decision came swiftly, delivered after just 3 hours of discussion. On February 15, 2019, they returned a unanimous verdict, guilty of first-degree murder and illegal possession of a deadly weapon. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Patrice Holloway addressed Jalen, her tone firm and unyielding. This was a brutal, premeditated act born of rage and vengeance, she declared. The consequences of your choices are profound and irreversible. With those words, she sentenced Jalen Dupree to life in prison without the
possibility of parole. And he could have got out of that if he was thinking. And the real victim of this, probably her husband and her kids that trusted her. He going to work at the mechanic shop all day and she doing whatever she doing, working late hours, but really with that guy. He the victim and the kids. What y'all think, cave dwellers? Could he have just gotten out of it? Like, he was wrong for not disclosing that HIV status. She probably could have got him on that. Well, no, she couldn't because her position. I don't know. Let me know what y'all think, cave dwellers. Like, share, subscribe. We back at it again tomorrow, the next day, whenever. Boom.